Hi there. Today I have great pleasure introducing Jorgen Sevild, who's the CEO of Inquova. And I learned that Jorgen has been applying a digital twin application for garment design. It's wonderful to have him sharing that with us. How are you, Jorgen?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Wonderful. Now I heard that you've been applying a digital twin application for garment design. Tell us more about that and what are the characteristics of the digital twins system?
Yeah, no, it's been quite a journey over the last 4 years. So as I started going into 3D and simulation technologies and digital twins for garments and fabrics. So in the beginning, back in 2017, we originally started making 3D scans of complete garments. So we would dress up a mannequin with a garment, let's say a pair of jeans was a typical product we would deal with. We would then scan the entire pair of jeans using approaches like photogrammetry and different ways of capturing the object in 3D. And then we would render that out in 3D and then import it into 3D environments, for example, like augmented reality applications or a VR headset, or even into 3D environments on a browser basis. So in the last 4 years, we've basically gone from taking a physical device, taking a physical object, kind of like a complete finished product, by that time, when we did these scans, we also realized that it doesn't really help us in the same way for manufacturing purposes or for design purposes. If we take the finished product and then scans the finished part of it, we would like to be able to capture the different components of it, and so that we can actually make adjustments to the finished product eventually, and we can use it then for even better design, product development, manufacturing purposes in there. So that's essentially the kind of short story of what we've been working on in the last 4 years. Has been then breaking down, I think if we look at the textile supply chain, we have fiber, yarn, fabric, garment, often finishing on that on top, and then we have a garment that hits the store as apparel that we as consumers buy. So what we've been doing now is really just breaking down the supply chain and looking at how do we digitize each of those parts of the supply chain, and of course also looking then at raw materials. So at this point, I would say that we are primarily looking at yarn, digitizing the yarns itself. That's something that is, as a Japanese company, that's been evolved quite far on, but that's very technical and not I think a very commercialized field. And what we've been focusing on has really just been on digitizing fabrics. So the idea is that if you have a fabric coming out of a fabric mill, like we have now 25 factories around the world that is using our technology to digitize. So as soon as the finished fabric comes out of the fabric factory, then it's being digitized immediately. So then you can say often 300 to 500 fabric developments per season is then being digitized immediately as soon as they come up from the quality control or the last steps of production, and then it's thrown up on a digital fabric library, and then designers from around the world can then access this library and utilize this digital twin as kind of like the simulation asset that they can use for design purposes, manufacturing purposes, other types of simulation.
Well, that sounds very exciting and very interesting. Now, just out of curiosity, this digital system, the virtual part, does it interact with the physical system? Can it make corrections if there's anything that it has identified to be unusual, I suppose?
Yeah, so I think textiles and apparel, and as you know, a lot of what I studied at PolyU under you and other professors as well, that has to do with systems engineering and standardization. And the fashion industry is notoriously famous for not being very big on standardization. They love to have stuff just flying all over the place, and kind of I think they put it under the creativity, kind of that they create allowances for this lack of standardization. But what we're really looking to do in the long run is now that what we are developing is what we're calling you can almost call it an industry 4.0 operating system. So it's a very practical approach to a lot of the industry 4.0 talk about how do we now bridge together specifically digital twin and simulation technologies with the manufacturing technology. So in a simple sense, for anyone to really understand, is thinking about, for example, a Word. We all know Microsoft Word. We all know we can type our essays and do these things, and then we hit Command or Control P, and then it hits the printer, and an A4 sheet comes out. So I think that's really what we're approaching. Still quite of a long journey to go, but the idea is that you can then create digital twins of the materials that goes into production, and then we can then simulate the processing of these materials, and eventually we can then have designers that they can basically just say, okay, typing on their keyboard, I would like to have 1,000 copies of this particular pair of jeans, hit Command P, and then an entire supply chain is activated globally around the world, or in one country, or however that company would have set up their supply chain.
Wow, you got me, hugely excited. Now you must show me. Can you show us, a glimpse of the software, how the digital twin software actually operates?
Exactly. So the part that I'm going to show you a little bit now is not so closely related to the manufacturing aspects of it, but I'll explain a little bit more the aspects that we've now been focusing on, and why we've chosen to focus on these areas now in the beginning, and also to talk a little bit about the ecosystem that exists beyond what we now have. But I think I'll go into that. So very happy to show you. Let me see here. I'm going to share my browser window with you. So I'm also very happy to share actually that the software application and the company that have developed the application that you're now looking at is called Virtual Touch. So Inkova here in Hong Kong are kind of very closely integrated partners of Virtual Touch, and Virtual Touch is also a Hong Kong-based company. So that's also something that excites us even more, is to be able to work with a Hong Kong-based company that have developed this technology, and we have now combined this with another technology that we have been working then with a company in Australia called Bandicoot Imaging Sciences. So in Sydney, there's Bandicoot Imaging Sciences, and what they've done is basically they are essentially the digital twin creator. So if you see here, there's 4 components of what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you, if you look on the top left corner, there's a fabric tab, a silhouette tab, a style tab, and a collection tab. So this is, if you're familiar with the supply chain and the processes that goes into a lot of this from a kind of behind fashion production, and this should be quite familiar. If not, then this is a glimpse into how a lot of this works in the real world, and how we're about to transition this onto becoming more digital. So the pretext of this, we cheated a little bit because you see a few fabrics in here already. And what we've done is that we have worked with the technology that Bandicoot has developed, and we're working together with them on as well. We've digitized a few denim fabrics here. So you can see these fabrics are from different, this is from a Pakistani mill called Navina. We have artistic garments from Pakistan as well. I think the example I'll use here is an example from, let me see here, from a factory in China with an office based in Hong Kong called Advanced Denim. So now I can click myself into this fabric, and as this is now loading in, this fabric now renders over this ball. So this is very typically kind of known and seen in the gaming industry, to be able to see drape, and you can then render the fabric around this ball. So now you can see also, I can go into detail here. And what we've done essentially with Bandicoot's technology is, with a DSLR camera, could be a Sony, Canon, Nikon, any brand, with some very kind of household equipment, we've now, Bandicoot has created technology that allows us to create 4K resolution PBR materials. So really kind of the top quality digital twins that can be brought into a digital simulation workflow. And so this would be the second step of that process, is that where we've cheated a little bit is that I've actually had this fabric in front of me. I've done the steps that I needed to do. That is basically just 5 minutes to be able to create this digital fabric. And then I've imported the final result now into Virtual Touch's platform, which is more of a, you can call it a preview or a little bit more of a collaboration and kind of creative software. So you can see here also how this is the fabric. This is pretty basic, I would say, in a lot of cases, but at least now we're looking at a digital twin of a fabric that I don't have next to me right now, but I have basically at our office here in Hong Kong. So if I go back here now, also you can see very briefly, you can see a description of this. You can see it is 100% cotton fabric. I can add details about the yarn, the density, the weight of the fabric, the kind of physics of the fabric. So before we move on, I just want to highlight also that when we talk about fabrics and digital twins, there's 2 main sides of it. There's the visual aspects of the digital twin, and then there's the physics of it. So fabrics has a lot of drape. I'm sure if you touch or feel your own shirt or t-shirts or anything that you're wearing, you would then feel how the fabric kind of moves, how heavy it is, how it behaves, and the physics of it. And so that's the other part of it. We need to capture those physics, and that's something that very often happens in laboratories in manufacturing companies already. So the addition of now, we've created a very, very easy, a simple and affordable and approachable and available basically technology here to allow them to capture the visual aspects of this, and then they just input a lot of the physics information in here. Now that we have this digital twin available, now I can show you, for example, if I go into Silhouette here, Virtual Touch has created a library of over 300 different 3D models. So I'm going to show you, for example, just a very basic one. I can then now go in here. I can select a template. So there's pages on pages on pages, as you can see here. But I'm going to just choose since we work on denim, I'm going to choose a men's utility pants. That's a classic kind of workwear garment. So as I load this in here, I'm now going to get prompted with a selection that I need to select the fabrics that I want to see here. So if I'm choosing the same fabric that I just saw, let me see, I'm choosing that one. Let me choose a knit just to highlight the difference here. And I can choose different washes of this fabric that I just showed you. So now I'm opening this up, and as you can see now immediately, I'm rendering on a 3D model here of a pair of jeans, essentially. And this pair of jeans is now, you can see on the right-hand side, I can choose between different fabrics. So here I have if I want to have a darker wash of this, I can choose a raw fabric, and said, boom, there I rendered out how that jeans would look like in a darker fabric, even lighter fabric. And I can also see that here. I can swap between a rinse fabric, an even more washed fabric. And I can also do, for example, just for the sake of the example, swap it out with a knit fabric here. So that wouldn't necessarily be the typical utility pant that you'd expect, but you can see this in here. And now I can go in here as well, and I can see, for example, I can choose just for visual appearance matters. I can go for, let's just select the background like this, a little bit more grunge. And then now you can see maybe it would be more appropriate to go back to this view here. So now you can see, how we took the digital fabric. I just applied this to one of the garments that I've had in my collection here. I can now save this here, or I can go back into my silhouette library. I can go into, even if I want to do, just to give you an example here as well, I can do a motion graphics one, and I can then select multiple garments on almost like a mannequin. So I'm just going to make a selection here, and let's do a knit shirt, since he's wearing both a shirt and a pants. So now you can see also how if I want to dress him up in a knit shirt, and then I'm going to select his bottoms to be a denim. So now you see as well here that you can see how that fabric behaves and lace over while he's walking, and I can navigate around and really inspect and see how that looks like. And so now I can just basically browse. Imagine if I now had a library of all of my manufacturers' fabrics available, I would now be able to make a selection of which fabrics I would like to sample. And if we, just to remind you, if I go back to the fabric tab here and click on one of these fabrics, I can actually directly in this technology, if you look on the left-hand side, request a swatch. That would be a physical sample. I can request another type of sample, for example, sample yardage, so the actual fabric length in itself. I can also request a 3D file so that I can download the 3D files and I can bring them into a custom workflow of my own. And I can do multiple at the same time, so I can add this to my sample cart before I check out. So now I'm going to move into the third style here. So that would be when I save. So as you see here now, I have a utility pant here. I actually have 3 utility pants in different views that I've now saved from the previous silhouette render that I did. I also have a few different, like I can show you here if I'd be comparing, I want to compare 2 fabrics with each other, and I would just want to use 3D tools to be able to compare 2 fabrics up against each other. So now I can also render out, for example, then these digital twins here onto a 3D model of just the fabrics laying on a table, as you see here on a marble table. And I can see how that looks like, and I can now, whoops, that was a little too far. So I can go here and I can now navigate around it, and I can even click on it if I'd like to focus, change my focus different places. So it's very gamified in many ways. And now that I've also built this style, as you've seen here, again, I can request swatch, I can present this to my buyers. I'm going to make a very simple case study out of this in terms of how a lot of our customers are using this for practical purposes in sales and product development. So now I can have a collection here. A lot of the clients that are using this software, they develop and design their own VR showrooms. So this is just a sample one here, but we do custom interior design for clients. So you could be a factory and you can have a mood board that you send, with your Pinterest images and anything that you feel, the mood that you want to have your virtual showroom be in. And then we have a team that will then develop this showroom for you. You can go into full screen here, and then I can click on these different fabrics that are hanging on here. As the manufacturer itself, I can swap out the different fabrics that I want to be able to present and the text that's written on top, and customize this showroom depending on the seasons and my latest developments. And I can now also send this, so you can see I can build a collection. So this would be the collection that I would share with a buyer. So maybe I would say, for example, imagine I would say Levi's presentation. And so this would be that where a fabric mill would be presenting to, let's say, Levi's as a company. Then they'll type Levi's collection. They'll build a VR showroom custom for Levi's in this purpose, and then also build a presentation of different fabrics. So here, for example, like rendered out of different garments from different angles on the table. And while I'm now building this, I can go into layout mode and I can drag this and make this a little bit bigger. I can also select this here and I can move this around and let's say drag this over here and do it like this. And I can also have this one on top and really just navigate this how I'd like. Click save eventually, and then I send the link directly to by email or to a customer here. Send this link over, and then anyone that have access to this can then download it. They can access this whenever they want to, and they can click into each one of these fabrics. Of course, this is a little bit of a limited range of fabric, but imagine this had a range of 25 to 30 fabrics. They can then click in here. The sales teams of the factory would then build these presentation custom for them, and they can then from completely ubiquitously access this from anywhere in the world at any time they'd like to, and click in here. And let's say I like this fabric in particular, I can go and I can download the 3D files immediately. And then I'll bring this into my design software. So this is really the process that we're now looking at, for example, like from a sales point of view, and also from a product development and design point of view. So we didn't talk too much about the manufacturing aspects of this, but that would be where you bring this into your own workflow, depending on your supply chain and how you've done this, and where we're currently moving forward into standardizing that a little bit more around this operating system that we've been working on developing.
Wonderful. My take is, it provides a set of tools that can massively accelerate and multiply the different types of scenarios, the virtual scenarios that any of your suppliers or your buyers would like to fantasize, and then develop this virtual environment quickly and be able to explore how things actually pan out before they can show it to the outside world. And that's really a quantum leap to the pace that we do physical things, nowadays in the real world. But just out of curiosity, I could be wrong here, but when you show those fabrics, that came to my mind that some fabrics have easily can have more wrinkles than others. So when you simulate this, when people walking, would you be able to detect whether some are having easily showing some wrinkles than others, so that conveying to the developer or the designer that may not be the right fabric to use?
So I think this is a very important question, and I think it relates back to the dimension that we talked about, the two dimensions. There's the visual dimension, and then there's the physical kind of physics dimension. And this is really where I find myself, wishing that I paid more attention in school in physics class, because then I would have a better understanding of, kind of getting to the realization that I feel that I've only realized, not in school, but I've realized now in my work, I've realized what physics really is. Physics is kind of the mathematics and the science behind, simulating how the world, the environment that we live in behaves, and how materials and objects and different things behave in our environment. And so now that we're approaching this from a technology angle, exactly like you said here as well, understanding what's called in the fabric world is called drape. So how the fabric behaves when it's hanging, when it's blowing in the wind, how it creases. I think we all, a lot of us knows that linen fabrics tends to crease a lot more than cotton fabrics. And so to be able to simulate these things is really just a matter of physics and the science of physics, and the way that we're able to bring physics into technology.
I think you're precisely right. And, be rest assured, the basic principle of digital twin, the virtual component is not just a show of virtualization and visualization. In fact, it's supposed to observe a set of constraints in order to develop the real performance of the virtual system as well. So therefore, whatever constraints and physical principles that needs to be observed, time will come and all these things will be manifest and embedded into the virtual systems operation. So I think that's really wonderful. Well, I think that is an eye-opener offered by your session today. So Jorgen Sevild, I'd like to thank you for your time, and it's wonderful showing us the digital twin software. And I hope all the best. I hope to see you on campus or somewhere in Hong Kong very soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Professor. It's been a pleasure.